So it's not us just innovating for others, it's we are innovating together. And it might sound a little counterintuitive, but a core part of our theory of influencing is also allowing ourselves to be influenced by Marylanders, reflecting their real needs in our work and our solutions.
Welcome to another episode of Chief Influencer. I'm your host, Anthony Shop, co-founder of Social Driver. Let's face it, Washington is the center of influence in the US and arguably in the world. Chief Influencer features leaders who have figured out how to break through in today's fragmented and fast-changing environment. Social Driver teamed up with the Communications Board and the George Washington University College of Professional Studies to recognize these incredible leaders as chief influencers and highlight how they inspire and influence others.
Hello, Chief Influencers. My name is Lesley Lopez. I'm a professor at George Washington University and the program director for the Public Relations and Communications graduate program there. And I'm also a state delegate in the Maryland General Assembly. And I'm very excited to be your guest host today for the Chief Influencer podcast. And today, our special guest is someone who I have great connections with in Maryland. She is the first ever Chief Innovation Officer, Francesca Ioffreda. So thank you for joining us. We have a whole list of questions because this is the first time we've ever had a Chief Innovation Officer in our state, and it's really unique as a position across the country. But just to kind of cue up who Francesca is, she has so much experience in just about every sector there is, public, private, social sectors. She's held roles at Harvard's, Brookings, and the Greater Washington Partnership. And one of the most important things that people will take away from our discussion today is how innovation is a big word, but you're really aimed at solving real world problems for real Marylanders. So we'll do a deeper dive into that. And so over the years, you've been called many names, Francesca, all of them good. But you've been called a Fulbright Scholar. You are a Harvard MPP and MBA alum. You have been a Brookings Metro non-resident senior fellow, and you're our first innovation officer. And today, you are a chief influencer. So welcome, welcome.
Thanks, Lesley. It's so great to be here with you today.
Yeah. So tell us about your journey before we do a deep dive into the work that you're doing on right now. Tell us on how you got here. What's been the path?
Absolutely. Well, I appreciate the kind words, and maybe just to ground us in kind of my upbringing. So I grew up in a diverse community outside of DC in a multicultural home. I attended public schools my whole life, and through that, I saw firsthand the way that policy, place, and frankly luck changed the trajectory of my classmates' experience. And coming from an immigrant family background myself, I felt really fortunate for the opportunities that I had. But also kind of this sense of 6 degrees of separation from a feeling that my life could have been very different. So this really inspired my goal and kind of North Star of creating economic opportunities for others that has been the through line throughout my entire career. And another through line has been this idea of being a translator across sectors, across constituencies, a bridge builder, if you will, and working in those gray spaces. My firm belief is that a lot of the biggest problems in our society require engagement across these different groups, and that everyone has a role to play, and collaboration makes us stronger. So I approach my career with wanting to make an impact, wanting to learn as much as possible, as quickly as possible, and wanting to get as many transferable skills and experiences across disciplines. So this has taken me to a diversity of places and roles. Lesley, you named a few, including international development and poverty alleviation work in Latin America, management consulting, working on public-private partnerships and smart cities efforts, working directly in mayor's offices, working in innovation labs within large companies, working at a CEO business alliance focused on regional economic development, even starting my own consultancy, and now Maryland. And I've always been very entrepreneurial. I love building things, whether that's within an organization or outside. And what excited me about this role and opportunity was to do that here in Maryland as the first Chief Innovation Officer, and to do that around topics that are so near and dear to my heart with a forward-looking and inspiring governor. in the state that I live in and love. And I just thought that was an opportunity of a lifetime. And Lesley, as you can probably attest, state government is just such an exciting place to work because you have the potential for impact at scale, but you're still close enough to residents to really understand the problems they face, but also see the immediate results of your work. So I'll just close with saying that, Governor Moore's vision paired with Bloomberg Philanthropies partnership that really made this innovation team possible has just created such an unparalleled opportunity to show what state government can be. And I feel privileged and honored every day to be able to bring everything that I've learned throughout my career and experiences and put that to work to delivering for Marylanders.
Well, Francesca, it's great to hear kind of your personal experience and your professional experience that really show the values that you bring to this work and what your vision is. And so I'm really excited to be talking about this very innovative Office of Innovation. So for a lot of people listening today, this will probably be the first time they've ever heard of the Department of Innovation and particularly what it does at the state level. So give us, in broad strokes, like, what is this and what is the goal of the agency?
Absolutely. So we're a relatively new team, a little over a year old. And it was really stood up because Governor Moore recognized from day one that foundational challenges like childhood poverty and economic mobility require new ways of working. So we are a team within Governor Moore's office focused on those two issue areas that are so core to the governor. He said from day one, his number one priority is reducing childhood poverty, creating opportunities for Marylanders. So we're working on those complex and entrenched problems and trying to come up with cross-cutting solutions. Our team is intentionally very multidisciplinary, so we kind of sit at the intersection of data science, human-centered design, strategy, and policy to create bold ideas and make sure that they translate to results for Marylanders. From day one, Governor Moore said that he was committed to rebuilding and reimagining state government to meet the needs of residents. And I think our team is a result and a testament to that, as well as his focus on partnering across the state, across the country to achieve those goals. And through a partnership with Bloomberg Philanthropies, our team was made possible.
Very cool. So oftentimes when people hear innovation, their brain instantly connects to technology, and that's the link that exists. But innovation is really a broader term. So what do you think innovation means, particularly for state government?
It's such an important question. I think innovation is about approaching and solving problems in new ways, with the new ways being broadly defined. We do, in our team, use and build technology, but it's one tool among many. Technology is not the solution. It can be a component of a solution. And I think the most important thing is identifying both the right approach and the right solutions for a given problem. And, as I said, part of our team's mission is to change the way that government works. And what that means to us is, first and foremost, putting residents at the center of everything, moving quickly, but also thoughtfully, combining rigorous data analysis with community input, and taking this kind of test and learn approach. So not assuming that we have all the answers at the outset, but being open to learning and adjusting as we go. And what that means is that our projects follow this human-centered design framework, which many of you have probably heard of. But what that looks like to us is combining both qualitative and quantitative research. So we're in the fields, meeting with residents all the time, one-on-one interviews, meeting them where they are to really understand their experiences. We're also deep in the data sets to uncover patterns, to really be able to go deeper. And we design with others. So we are, a team that's notorious for using sticky notes and whiteboards. We're engaging experts. We're looking at models of success across other industries, across other states. And we're pushing ourselves to think big about what might be possible. And then we prototype and implement. So that means starting with a pilot, seeing how people are engaging with the solution, and being able to adapt and then help that scale. And then finally, I think the work of innovation is also a commitment to collaboration. So our team being in the governor's office, I think gives it a unique vantage point of being able to take this whole of government approach, being able to work in partnership with at least one, but often many, many agencies to solve problems together with this recognition that the more perspective, voices, and entities we have working together, the stronger our end solutions will be.
One thing that you just talked about that I want to do a deeper dive on is like your human-centric design or human-centered design and community engagement and making sure that your work is based on the real needs of real people. And that involves having conversations with real people. So tell us about what you've heard from listening to real folks.
Yes, absolutely. So what we've heard from listening to families, as maybe let me just start with our priorities around reducing childhood poverty and improving economic mobility are huge issue areas. There are so many ways that we can address those problems. So it was really critical to us to understand, one, what are families saying that they need, and what does the data tell us? So when we talk to families, what we're hearing is that parents are looking for financial stability, access to essential goods and services locally. So think childcare, fresh food, and then access to quality and affordable childcare so that they can work and also feel that their child will be safe and taken care of and on a pathway to learning. And, those are also very interconnected. Access to jobs and educational opportunities that increase financial stability require reliable quality childcare. And then what we've also seen in the data and in talking to families is that a disproportionate percentage of Maryland parents are employed by small businesses. And so small businesses have become a real big focus for us for that reason, also because the child care providers who enable parents to work are so often small businesses themselves. And those small businesses face particular challenges. They have less access to capital, especially if they're in low income communities. And then the neighborhoods have less childcare and less fresh food providers in low income communities. So, putting this all together, what this means for our team and the way we've kind of focused our work has been really around three key dimensions. The first is empowering Maryland families by increasing access to childcare and helping them build financial security. The second is strengthening the economic and community ecosystem by supporting the small businesses that anchor neighborhoods. And then the third is transforming our government capabilities to make sure that we are equipped to deliver on those needs of Marylanders. So, kind of zooming out, the way we've thought about it is you can't just address the individual without addressing the community. And to really uplift both families and neighborhoods, you have to take this multi-pronged approach, and then the government has to be an important actor in that journey.
Yeah, absolutely. So you've given us the priorities that your agency is working on. Let's talk about concrete examples or projects that you want to share with the listeners today. Like, what are some specific things you're working on?
The kinds of things we work on can look quite diverse. It could be bringing a program to life. It could be developing an AI tool to improve internal data processing. But one project that I want to talk about that is near and dear to my heart is building the Maryland Community Business Compass. So this is a data platform designed to support small businesses. And why I'm so excited about it and proud of it is, we went from concept to launch in 5 months. We built it in-house for less than $5,000. And we also used it to direct $10 million in new state funding to high-need communities. And we've seen great adoption, over 15,000 active users in just 4 months. But the real story is kind of how we got there and how we built it. So, as I said, in looking at the data, talking to residents, what we saw is just a huge gap in essential services. So think childcare, fresh food, things every family needs between low income and high income communities. And as we dug into that, those small businesses that provide those services faced a lot of challenges. For example, we met a small business owner in Indian Head, Maryland, who was looking to start a local independent grocery store to combat the food desert that she experienced in her community. And she told us about how difficult the journey was to get capital, to know where to start her businesses, to get the support she needed. So she had a vision, she had the wherewithal, but it was still an arduous process. And that really served as the inspiration for us creating this tool to help unlock barriers. And so what this tool does in essence is helps democratize access to data, insights, funding sources, and support for entrepreneurs that are bringing these essential services to their communities. When we thought about, big businesses, they have government relations teams, they have business analysts, but your average small business is focused on kind of delivering for residents and trying to make it. They might not have the time and the capacity. And so we wanted to make it easier for them to operate. And so what that looked like was really three key features to address the problems that we heard. The first is kind of this idea of market intelligence. So an entrepreneur might not know where there is demand for their services. So what we did was provide granular kind of community level economic indicators of where there was unmet market demand and need to show where they might be able to start or expand a successful business. So this could look like where there's shortages of licensees for childcare providers in a given neighborhood. The second was state and local incentives. We heard time and time again in talking to small businesses that they knew there was money out there, but they didn't know how to access it, and it was really cumbersome to navigate. So what we did was create a centralized database pulling from over 70 different websites of over 250 state local incentives that a small business could search and filter for. And then finally, we created a connect to experts feature. So starting a small business can be difficult. It can be lonely. People do need to talk to others in this journey, and no one should have to navigate it alone. So we created a feature where they could get access to all of this technical assistance depending on their challenge, whether that was permitting, licensing, business planning. And we launched this in December with Governor Moore, and as I said, over 15,000 active users. And I think on the other side, in terms of how government is deploying its resources, the Compass tool really enabled us to guide $10 million of new state funding for childcare and fresh food based on the data in the tool. So we saw it as kind of a virtuous cycle where you're helping the entrepreneur on the ground, and then you're making sure that more dollars are getting to the entrepreneur, and we are being good stewards of taxpayer dollars.
Yeah, that's fascinating. I think one of the most rewarding things about being in state and local government is that you really see up close the people that you benefit in a way that I think in federal office, federal government, you're a little bit more detached because of the scale of the amount of people that you're representing and impacting. But when you're doing very intensive state-based work or community-based work, it's just such a rewarding experience. So speaking of which, lots of people who listen to this podcast are local leaders. They are people like myself in state legislatures in local areas. Kind of piggybacking on what we were talking about, what kind of problems do you think the chief innovator of Maryland is most poised to solve?
Absolutely. And we look forward to solving those problems with everyone, with other stakeholders. But I think, the innovation team thrives on solving problems that require cross-agency or partnership, areas where data can help democratize access to information to enable people to make smarter decisions, and problems that no single entity fully owns. So going back to that concept of gray spaces, if you will. So we have, as I mentioned, just a range of skill sets represented in our team. And I think that enables us to take on a variety of challenges. So it's less about kind of the subject matter, so to speak, but about the how we work to generate and unearth new potential solutions. I think, as I said at the outset, being in the governor's office enables us to be the connective tissue. Many agencies are, working heads down on their own problems, and rightly so. But we can help unlock patterns and identify where we might be able to design new solutions together. And I think, too, the data piece is just so important. So to give you maybe an example of what this could look like, financial stability, as I said, is one of the key kind of cross-agency problems that we've been exploring. For many low-income parents, they don't have savings, and less than two and having just $2,000 can help protect against eviction, missed meals, or having utilities shut off. So it's really important that people have a nest egg, but it's hard, especially in times where we know affordability is a key concern for so many Marylanders. The good news is that in Maryland, we actually do have programs that can help people to build that financial footing. So we have a program called Maryland Saves, and it's a state-sponsored emergency savings and retirement program for small business employees and gig workers. But right now, many small businesses and their employees don't know about this and aren't taking advantage of it. So we saw this as an incredible opportunity to provide, to boost enrollment and really help families get this financial footing, because this program is no cost to small businesses. And we heard from the small businesses themselves, they want to help their employees, but they don't necessarily always know how or feel that they have the capacity to. So what we did as an innovation team was convene all of the agencies that touch small businesses. As you can imagine, there are many. We also wanted to understand, why weren't people participating in this program in the way that we would expect or hope to see. And one of the biggest takeaways is that many simply didn't know about it. So that led us to think about, okay, what are no-cost or low-cost ways that we can increase enrollment through process improvements, through communication updates? So kind of leaning on behavioral science techniques that we've seen work at the federal level or in other programs. So we mapped the process. We spoke to so many small businesses and employers and really came up with this playbook, which is a behavioral science informed guide on how kind of the Maryland Saves program and state agencies can increase program enrollment.
Mhm.
And thus far, it's been embraced and adopted. And we're excited to see where that work goes.
This episode is brought to you by the George Washington University's College of Professional Studies. With in-person and online programs ranging from master's degrees in public relations strategy to certificate programs in digital communications, GW offers more than just the credentials to help working professionals get ahead. It prepares them to be leaders in their field. Check out cps.gwu.edu for more information.
As I said at the beginning of our conversation kicking things off, you've had many, many titles. You've worked internationally, you've worked nationally, you've worked in cross-sector engagement, you've been private, social, public, all those things. So talk to us a little bit about the importance of building partnerships, right? You mentioned that the focus of the work is really cross-agency and working in a collaborative model with state legislators like me. But just let's broaden that up a little bit. Let's talk about how you build partnerships.
So as you've heard, part of, my core philosophy is that you have to work in partnership, that every sector has a role to play in driving progress forward. And I think you'll see that reflected in the innovation team's work. What we try to do is to amplify the combined impact of stakeholders working on an issue area. So to put this into view, let's take the childcare space, because we've talked a lot about that. So in the public sector, you have, many actors, including the legislature, but also the Maryland State Department of Education. They play a key role in ensuring that teachers and educators have the right training to meet the needs of parents and children. In the civic sector, there are professional associations, resource centers, family advocacy groups that provide peer support and resources to parents and providers that are navigating this ecosystem. On the, center and home-based providers, they're all part of the private sector. Many small businesses, as we've talked about, and they're navigating market forces while trying to maintain a commitment to nurturing our state's youngest residents. And then you have large employers. Businesses also want workers with affordable childcare options so that their employees can come to work feeling productive and engaged. So I think, looking at that constellation of actors and motivations, sometimes it can be tempting to see these sectors as in conflict. I think what we try to do is step back and understand the unique influence, the strengths, and the ability of each to support Maryland's children, and try to find win-win solutions, and bring folks together. I think so often we don't have people in the same room having discussions. And so part of our theory of the case and the way we work has been to create these co-design sessions. And, that's a fancy word, but what it means is bringing diverse perspectives into the room and guiding them through an ideation and brainstorming session where everyone is able to respectfully voice their experiences, what they've seen, and put forth solutions. And I think it's really magic when you have people in a room having those discussions. And I think what comes out of them would surprise so many people.
Yeah, I think the more organized a work group or study can be, and especially when you put innovation as the North Star up there, it really yields a much better result. But speaking of which, how do you know how to take, like, which ideas, I should say, which ideas you can take and implement for the government?
Yeah, absolutely. So I like to say that our team is data driven, community grounded, and results obsessed. And I think the last piece, results obsessed, is really critical to our work because we don't want to stay in the world of theory or research. I don't think that would be success for us as a team. And implementation is really, as we know, where the rubber meets the road. So to give an example of that, beginning last year, we partnered with the Department of Labor's Office of Financial Regulation to stand up and launch a new program called the Maryland Community Investment Venture Fund. So this was established through legislation through the Governor's Access to Banking Act, which aims to increase capital access to all Maryland communities, especially low-income communities. So what the fund does is it provides grants to community banks and credit unions to pilot and adopt fintech solutions that are designed specifically to meet the needs of small businesses in low-income communities. So think making small loan dollars just as profitable as large ones, or rethinking credit worthiness by using other indicators of credit. That's what we're really talking about when we think fintech. So, our team to move kind of that fund from legislation to implementation hinged on a few key things. The cross-agency partnership. So we worked hand in hand with the Office of Financial Regulation. They were true partners in this work to bring the fund to life. It also meant making sure that we understood the stakeholders and the problems and were engaging in that cross-sector discussion. So we kicked off by interviewing over 150 small businesses to really understand their challenges accessing capital. Simultaneously, we met with community banks and credit union leadership to understand their experiences in trying to serve low-income communities. And that really helped to inform the work to make sure that the programs and the solutions we were considering were anchored in the real needs. And then I think, it was maintaining momentum and fostering connections, which we've talked a little bit about. And I think it's critical to bring people to the same room. For example, having the small business in the same room as the banker, as the fintech. That doesn't often happen, but we were able to do that. And we had a series of events that I think helped to show momentum and progress and also hold ourselves accountable. For example, we hosted a demo day, so to speak, where we brought the financial institutions together with high impact fintech partners to kind of jumpstart those potential collaborations.
Very cool.
And where we are now, the fund is in the final stages of evaluating applications for the first cohort of pilot agreements. And we expect to be able to announce the grantees later this spring.
Wow, congratulations. That
Thank
has to feel good, seeing it go from an idea to a thing that is going to actually put money into this ecosystem. Another reason why state government's the best. Taking a step back again, just the word innovation means change or growth or things evolving or leveling up, right? Becoming modernized in some way. And so many of our systems in government are designed to minimize risk. So when you are approaching a new project or a new initiative, how do you work with skeptics to build trust? Or maybe just in general, how do you build trust when you have such a ambitious goal ahead of you?
Absolutely. It's such an important question. Change is hard for us all. In government, you're not incentivized to take risks unless you end up on the front page of a paper. So it really requires kind of thinking differently. And I think for us, it starts with the governor's leadership. Informing a team like ours, I think we have the explicit permission to be disruptive and think differently, which allows our colleagues to feel more comfortable trying something new with us. The governor has been such a champion of this work and the entire administration on making progress on these ambitious goals. He encourages us to push harder, think differently. And I think that leadership cascading from the top sends a really clear message. Being an innovation team, I think that again gives permission. I think gives us, I would argue, the mandate to push the needle in terms of kind of what's the art of the possible and not just anchoring on what has been. So we are known as the team with sticky notes. So we'll frequently have sessions where we bring in state partners and paper the walls with sticky notes. I've talked a lot about these co-design sessions, but I do so because I think they're really, really important in helping to solicit feedback and helping people feel heard and bought in across the life cycle of the project. We know that there are people that have been working on these issues in state government, outside of state government for decades. We don't claim to be able to have that experience, but what we can do is bring that experience to the fore and really give it a voice and make sure that it's informing the work. So we're routinely engaging across the state. And then making sure that we're grounded in data and in resident voice. It shouldn't be a one-time kind of top-down approach. We are always engaging with residents across the life cycle. As Governor Moore says, we're data-driven and heart-led, and we try to embody that each and every day. And I think ultimately, when people start to see results and try new things, it becomes infectious. They build the confidence to do it over and over again.
Yeah. I mean, success begets success. And I really like the respectful tone that you're taking with all the stakeholders here. I think that's really a foundation of success. So one of the buzzwords we hear all the time in every single sector is AI. And it seems like AI and innovation probably have some overlapping conversations that are going on. So where do you think we should be optimistic or be embracing it? And where do you think governments should be very thoughtful about how they use it?
You're absolutely right. I think you can't listen to a podcast, read an article without hearing the mention of AI. It is here. I think we have to grapple with it. And that's consistent with how the governor talks about AI. Despite the uncertainty, the anxiety, he also feels hope. And, he puts forth that as a state, we need to be on our front foot, not our back heels. And I share that vision. I don't think we can afford to be a passive observer of this moment. We have to be thoughtful architects of how AI will shape government and the communities we serve. And if we're a late adopter, that will hurt our communities. So we need to have a forward-looking posture, one that is bounded with the appropriate guardrails, but is also harnessing the opportunities that AI can provide. So, for example, how we've approached it is, one, using AI in some of our internal work. I think just kind of low-hanging fruit is tackling kind of frequent, high annoyance, low-risk tasks. So we think of these as like paper cut problems. So tedious, high friction daily tasks that cause headaches for staff and residents. I think AI is enabling us to streamline that and free up our civil servants to spend more of the time with why they got into these roles in the first place, which is serving residents. It's also changing kind of the cost structures of government in terms of we don't always have to buy from external vendors. Now we can build tools ourselves at low or no cost. Our team, for example, built something called Legi Assist, which is a legislative research tool. Coming into state government, we wanted to make sure that we had an understanding of what bills had been passed on child poverty and economic mobility for the previous years. We needed to get up to speed very quickly. And as a small team, we didn't have a legislative, research assistant. We didn't have the capacity to procure a vendor. And so, with the help of our data scientists, built an internal tool that could quickly summarize and scan legislation. And that's been a really boon to us, giving us back time to be able to focus our efforts. We've also taken a really thoughtful approach on how we're upskilling the government workforce. I think many people, hear about AI, but don't necessarily know how to apply it in their own workflows. And that takes training. It takes time and commitment. And so what we've been doing is training state workers on kind of productivity enhancements with AI, but also the kind of core technology to give them the practical experience and the understanding of what they're deploying. And as I mentioned, we've seen this firsthand, by employing kind of AI coding assistants. We built the Maryland Community Business Compass completely in-house. And that also, in addition to saving dollars, it enabled us to make rapid shifts. We didn't have to put change orders in for external vendors. We could do that ourselves and be more nimble and reactive to feedback. With all of those positives, I will also say we have to be thoughtful about AI in terms of accuracy and reliability, especially when we have, the public trust in mind. And I think that requires strong policy and rigorous community-centered testing. Just to highlight, Maryland has a comprehensive responsible AI use policy, which establishes a risk-based governance framework and strict guardrails, making sure there's a human in the loop on oversight, mandatory bias testing. I think it's also, in addition to having that framework, it's asking the right, questions. A policy on paper, as we've discussed, only goes so far. It's about how do we apply that in our daily work. So when we're evaluating or building a new AI tool, we're, guided by three core questions. What could go wrong? Who could this exclude? And how do I know it works? So we're going through the asking of those questions through testing, evaluation, benchmarks to ensure that it's reflecting our communities and that we're doing everything we can to mitigate downside risk.
Love it. No, makes great sense. All right. So last question. I can't let you off the hook without talking about the importance of being a chief influencer and influence, because this is the Chief Influencer podcast. So when you think about influence in public service, what does that mean in terms of like bringing people along, not just announcing an idea, but engaging with others, influencing them, and building trust and partnership in community?
Yes, I love this question. I think influence is so important in any role, and especially in the public sector. And I think our greatest form of influence is being able to collaborate, convene stakeholders, and bring others into the process. So it's not us just innovating for others, it's we are innovating together. And it might sound a little counterintuitive, but a core part of our theory of influencing is also allowing ourselves to be influenced by Marylanders, reflecting their real needs in our work and our solutions. And then there are a few kind of practical strategies that I think, help to bring people into the work as co-creators. First and foremost, investing in relationships. And that's relationships broadly. So not just the cabinet secretaries, it's also the staff who review loan applications, the small nonprofits who have been working in communities for decades, the parents that are navigating kind of a labyrinth of childcare and financial challenges. And it's too late to engage those individuals when you're about to launch a product or program. You have to engage them from the front end to make sure that, one, it's going to be successful by grounding it in their real needs and making sure that they also have a voice in that. I think part of that is also to not underestimate the power of just showing up. It's the small things. It's a coffee, a lunch, going to the community meeting that show people that they matter and that our most precious resource, our time, is spent with them. The second, piece of advice I would have is communicating in ways that people can understand. What we found, especially when you're trying to work with so many different constituencies and sectors, is they might use different language to talk about the same problem. And part of it is communicating in ways that resonate with a specific stakeholder. And that's really important when you're trying to create this wide tent of collaboration. It also means identifying the trusted community messengers who can provide the candid feedback, but also help amplify the messages, and really extend the reach. We also believe in showing our work. That means working in public. So we are prototyping ideas, we're putting it out there, we're sharing it with internal, external stakeholders. I think that's important for a few reasons. One, it creates transparency. It also expands the mental framework that people have about what government can do. And it helps them to believe that if they take a risk and put their capital, social, financial behind it, they have confidence in the ability to execute. We make joining easy. So we want to make it intuitive. Everyone is inundated with calls, with Zooms, with meeting requests. So just very practically, we send packages of materials for people to digest. We include questions and prompts. We share our email everywhere for feedback. We want to make it simple for people to reach us and get involved. And then the last thing is, zooming out to the bigger picture. It's my firm belief that people want to be part of something larger than themselves. And so I think it's incumbent upon us and important to give people a bold vision to grab onto, and also show them how they can be an important part of that change.
Love it. Well, Francesca, you are killing it. I feel like this is a really reassuring conversation. It gives me so much of a greater sense of what our state government is doing. And I'm up to my eyeballs in state government all day, every day. But to hear your perspective on a lot of the shared problems and shared values we have is really, it gives me a lot of encouragement and renews my commitment to these things. And I know the people who are listening, even if they're not Marylanders, you could be. It's a great date. You should come here. But even if they're not Marylanders yet, there's a regional approach to this where the rising tide lifts all boats, and it's a huge impact for everyone in the area. So thank you, Francesca, for everything you're doing. Any last comments or pieces of advice or things you want people to remember, websites you want people to visit or anything like that?
Well, I just want to take kind of the last comments and say thank you to you, Lesley, for the tireless work that you've done to advocate to make our communities safer, to have our families be able to have that financial stability, the pathways to upward mobility. None of this work happens without committed legislators, without committed stakeholders like yourself. So just so grateful for your leadership. And it's been a real privilege to be in conversation with you all. And I will give a plug to innovation.maryland.gov is our website. And if you want to check out the tool that I mentioned for small businesses, it's compass.maryland.gov. We want to hear from you. Send us an email, share feedback. Really looking forward to working together to make our state better and more inclusive.
I love it. I love a good plug. That was perfect. All right, Francesca. Well, thank you for joining us. And thank you for Chief Influencer for allowing us to use this platform to connect to folks. And have a great day.
Chief Influencer is a production of Social Driver. We help clients transform complexity into clarity with people-centered strategies. Whether you're looking to elevate the influence of your brand or of your leaders, check out socialdriver.com to learn more. For show notes or to nominate a guest, visit us at chiefinfluencer.org or follow Chief Influencer on LinkedIn.